Every day we make decisions that affect our lives. Some of these decisions can be so important that they affect us for days to weeks to even years. In my early years of college, I kept to myself. I would sometimes try to meet people, but it always ended the same way. I finished a class and never spoke to anyone from there again. While attending university, I tried something a little different. I worked a job on campus. My coworkers were relatable and fun to spend time with. We'd play video games, talk outside of work, and get food. Despite getting along well with them, I don't speak to a single one of them now. I've always dealt with loneliness, a feeling of isolation, and like I couldn't connect with most people. Sometimes I would daydream about the idea of being able to try again. I'd imagine what I would have done differently or how things could have turned out. What if I had joined those clubs I was invited to instead of just working? Or if I had focused less on getting through each day and more on making meaningful connections? I do have friends, I want to make that clear, but nearly all of them are online. At the time, I still wanted some kind of strong, meaningful connection in person, something that was new and that I had built up on my own. Now though, I think if I were given a second chance, things wouldn't be that different from today. I still wouldn't have any college or university friends, I'd still primarily be talking with people I met online, and I'd still be single. The reason being, because I'm still me. Even if I go back to the start, join a club, and try spending more time with everyone I met, I'm still fundamentally the same person. Yeah, I experienced different things, and through those experiences I would be a bit different, but nothing has really changed about me. It wouldn't matter that I changed who I'm around or what I'm doing, because I would still be the same version of me from that starting point. To end up in a different situation, I would need to change my habits, actions, and even my outlook. Speaking very personally, I'd need to be more proactive in trying to spend time with the people that liked me, and I'd need to loosen up around them to better facilitate the chance for a long-lasting relationship to grow. However, I would still be dealing with every other insecurity, emotional struggle, and expectation I had during those times. So daydreaming about how I picture myself to be in a new scenario doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to actually be that person. Maybe this isn't the right way to start this video. Maybe it's a little too personal, or maybe it's not totally obvious enough. Oh god, I should have stuck with the original idea. This one is going to end up to be a complete and utter flop. It's not going to hook anybody. Hi, I'm Anari, and I'm going to talk about the Tatami Galaxy. It's a beautiful anime both in presentation and the messages it brings. The Tatami Galaxy was released in 2010 and has never had an official English release. It's based on the novel of the same name, which was published in 2004. The adaptation was critically acclaimed, winning 2 awards. The anime was produced by Madhouse, the same studio that did works like Hunter x Hunter, No Game No Life, Frieren, and others. The director was Masaki Yuasa, who has a rich history in animation and has directed a lot. I'm not familiar with his work, but after Tatami Galaxy there's a few things of his I'd like to watch. A spiritual sequel exists in The Night is Short, Walk On Girl, which released in 2017. Also directed by Yuasa, but this time animated by his studio, Science Saru. The animated film is also based on a book of the same title, which was published in 2006. If you've never seen the Tatami Galaxy, let me give a very brief synopsis of how the anime plays out. I am going to spoil something, but it's important to know to understand how the anime works. This is revealed at the end of the first episode anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Our story follows our main character, Watashi. He's just starting university and is choosing a club to be involved in. Watashi's goal is to have a perfect campus life, in his words, a rose-colored campus life. So he picks a club, goes for 2 years, and finds dissatisfaction with this choice. He feels that the last 2 years were wasted and deeply regrets how it went. That if things had gone differently, if he never met specific people, if he didn't join the current club, everything would have been perfect. Now here's the big spoiler. The big reveal that happens at the end of every episode. As Watashi regrets everything from the last 2 years and wishes he could start over, that a different club would have made all the difference, blaming everything and everyone around him for the end result, the university's clock tower begins to rewind, and credits. Cue the amazing ending theme. This is the format for every episode in Tatami Galaxy. Watashi chooses a circle to be involved in, life doesn't play out the way he expects it to, then cue the rewind to try again in the next one. If you've never seen the anime, I want to assure you that this isn't repetitive. There are only 11 episodes, meaning that the entire show can be watched in about 4.5 hours, a convenient runtime. This is a beautiful anime that deserves the accolades it's received. It has an amazing message behind it, and the humor is great too. I mean shit, Watashi's libido is represented by this little cowboy on a horse that he calls Johnny. It represents a bit more than just his libido. But the fact that Johnny is voiced by the same VA that does Viral from Gurren Lagann makes it all the better. I don't know about you, but the idea of having Viral voicing my cowboy sounds fucking amazing. If you haven't noticed yet, the visuals in the anime are distinct. Its use of color is striking, and its animation is fun due to the art style being more simplified. With a simple style, it allows the animators to actually animate, but it also follows the same look as the cover of the source material. In some scenes, they even do some mixed media by incorporating photographs or real people in backgrounds. I will say though, you seriously need to lock the fuck in when watching this.
いかにも私は下鴨幽水槽の住人である。そうですが。
Our narrator Watashi goes 3 miles a minute when it comes to his talking speed. And since the anime doesn't have any dub, if you're not speed reading, you'll be pausing or rewinding to see what was said. But it's worth it. The dialogue is clever, quick, and well written. It's also mature, and I don't mean that in a weird way. The setting is in university, so the younger characters are 18 to 20, with some of the older characters being, I assume, around 24 to 26. There is some use of alcohol along with sexual themes, but you'll be fine though, I'm not worried about it. Now with all of that said, I can properly move into discussing the anime more in depth. Due to the nature of this, I will be getting into specific examples, so spoilers are ahead and you have been given my obligated warning. Tatami Galaxy is a beautiful anime with an amazing message, but to fully appreciate the message it presents, I want to talk about 4.5 themes that I believe the show focuses on. Why 4.5? Mostly because Watashi eventually grows an obsession over his 4.5 tatami dorm room, but also because one of these themes is more of a wrap-up conclusion type of thing. Listen, it just works. Let me roll with it. Sliding into the first one, I have to talk about bias. Now, I'm certain we all know what I mean when I say this, but let me be very clear about it. When I'm talking about bias, it's about an individual's temperament or outlook. Bias isn't inherently a bad thing. It really just means that we have preferences and assumptions that we're inclined to fall into. This involves simple things like our favorite foods or hobbies, to more complex things that can involve other people. Everybody is biased about something. It's only natural. The level of bias someone has for something depends on what the topic is. For our narrator, Watashi, we see that he is a very biased person when it comes to the people around him. An interesting fact about our protagonist is that he doesn't have an actual name. I've been calling him Watashi because everyone online calls him that. It's worth noting that Watashi means I, me, or myself in Japanese. We also see everything from his perspective, how he views himself, his situation, and how he sees everyone else around him. Getting the picture here. Watashi is a biased narrator. Watashi is me. I don't think there is anything wrong with being biased, but I also believe that it's something we need to keep in mind. As we spend time with our protagonist, we start to lose some sympathy for him towards the end of the anime. At least I did, which I think makes it even better because I found him relatable in some ways. As the episodes go by, we begin seeing new sides to every character we meet, showing that our first impressions were based on the situation Watashi had met them in. The very first episode, we meet Higuchi, but when we're introduced to him, he asserts himself a god. Given the way he holds himself and his clothing of choice, I honestly thought he was one. The confidence and information Higuchi presents has Watashi convinced when they first meet. Despite this godly first impression, we later learn that he's just a regular guy, an 8th year student with a very insightful way of thinking and approaching life. My guess is that Ozu came to Higuchi for advice to help Watashi, so they came up with this scheme for the first episode's introduction, but that's just my guess. Speaking of Ozu, this is Ozu, a ghastly looking fellow with his O-shaped mouth and his yokai appearance. Watashi and Ozu become acquaintances in every episode. Watashi believes Ozu is the bane of his existence. Even in the first episode when Watashi meets Higuchi, he immediately faults Ozu for the situation Higuchi brings up. In every episode, our protagonist believes Ozu is one of the reasons why his life isn't the rose-colored perfection he's trying to get. And on my first viewing, Ozu really didn't help his case for me either. Nearly every episode, there is a similar conversation that the two will have, where Ozu says they're tied by the black thread of fate, and that he's done his best work to make Watashi as despicable as possible. I genuinely thought this creature was actually a yokai, but like most things in this anime, first impressions are not necessarily correct. Towards the end of the 11 episodes, we get a few shots showing that Ozu is actually just a regular person. He isn't this ghoulish monster with sharp teeth, or this literal sea creature coming out of the floor. That's Watashi's perspective that we're shown. Hell, we even see that Ozu can actually be a good friend to Watashi and is trying to give him the life that he believes Watashi wants. That said, Ozu is a bit of a shithead, I can't deny that, but all in all, he seems like a pretty cool guy who sees Watashi as his good friend. When we're first introduced to Jogasaki, we're given the impression that he's someone completely up his own ass, that there isn't a single redeeming quality about this person. Watashi views him as someone that puts himself up as a king, and that the movie club is his to rule. Jogasaki is athletic, popular, and has plenty of women surrounding him. Everything Watashi wishes he could have. They really make him out to be a pretty despicable person when we're first introduced to him, but in further episodes we learn that he isn't one-dimensional. He's friends with Higuchi, Hanuki, and Ozu. He even helps Watashi meet his goals in the very next episode. Yeah, he does have his weird side, none of that is a lie, but that weird side doesn't make up the whole person. Hanuki is an older student around the same age as Higuchi and Jogasaki. She's someone that Watashi becomes acquainted with when he joins Higuchi's club or when he joins the English conversation circle. In general, Watashi's view of her is based entirely on her sex appeal. Because of this surface level impression, he's more concerned about her romantic life than anything else she's involved with. But we know that she's dating Higuchi and is even friends with Ozu and Jogasaki. We also know that when she drinks too much, she gets a little freaky. And for that reason, she's very picky about who she goes drinking with. Ozu and Higuchi probably being the best possible people for that role. Our final character, Akashi, is a year or two younger than Ozu and Watashi. She's the cold kohai who they end up meeting one way or another and is seemingly destined to be with Watashi. Watashi always seems to have the same kind of perspective about her though. He doesn't think anything poorly of her, instead he actually cheers her on for her independent and cold demeanor. Despite him admiring these traits, he never sees her as a potential partner until the finale. I think he sees her as someone that's playing and as though he has her fully figured out, which is stupid because she's honestly pretty damn amazing. Akashi seems to do well in any role that she applies herself in. We see her involved in the cycling club, the movie club, and the Birdman club. She also has her quirks, with her fear of moths and her love of the mochi guman. Watashi's bias for every person he meets is one of the faults preventing him from getting what he wants. He views everyone exclusively from the first impression he meets them, which that first impression is heavily influenced by the situation he's in. His view of them never really grows or changes until the finale of the show, partially because he rewinds before he's given the chance for growth, but also because he needs to change his outlook to gain that growth. Even if he rewinds and starts over, he's still the same person from that starting point, meaning his outlook in this new life remains the same, along with all expectations, goals, insecurities, and the type of actions and reactions he'll have to certain situations. All of these are factors that prevent him from building genuine, fulfilling relationships. It's difficult to see a rose-colored world when your viewpoint is entirely in black and white. He's also quick to avoid taking responsibility for how his actions placed him in a situation. Instead, he pushes blame onto someone like Ozu for why his life has become the way it is. Stepping away from bias, we move into what I believe is the next naturally ordered theme for Tatami Galaxy. I already said the word in the previous paragraph, that being expectations. There are plenty of examples showcasing Watashi's expectation of his campus life to the reality of it. We see something like this play out in every episode. The most obvious example is in the show's format itself, but I think a more interesting topic is Watashi's expectations when it comes to relationships, people, and himself. There are 3 episodes that follow the same overall storyline because Watashi joins 3 different clubs. Through these 3 clubs, he finds himself involved with 3 different women. Each episode focuses on one of the 3, along with the club that brought them together. With this format, we learn more about the entire situation, and it gives us more information about the type of person Watashi can be. The 3 women are Hanuki, Kaori, and Keiko. With all 3 of them, we see he views his relationship with them like a board game, with the goal a perfect relationship and maybe eventually marriage. In this loop, he meets Hanuki in the English conversation circle. Their friendship slowly grows until she considers him a close friend, so she finally invites him out to drinks. But they both have different perspectives about this invitation. For Hanuki, she's genuinely just going out to drinks with close friends. That's why Jogasaki is drinking with her when Watashi does choose to arrive. But for Watashi, he views this as an opportunity to grow their relationship into something more. Keiko is a pen pal that Watashi is exchanging letters with. He found her through a book that Ozu had lent him, her information written in the back. We eventually learned that Keiko never existed and that Watashi had been exchanging letters with Ozu, of course. At least up until Akashi decided to take over the letters fully. She didn't do it to prank him like Ozu had been, but because she felt it would have been bad to have his pen pal suddenly ghost him. However, eventually Akashi's own guilt led to her wanting to come clean about it, which is why Keiko insisted on meeting up, and is how Watashi finally learns that she doesn't exist. Kaori is Jogasaki's love doll, who Watashi is hired to be a bodyguard for. He eventually falls in love with the idea of her and attempts to elope. He even imagines how his life with her would play out, involving the two growing old, starting a family, and him even meeting her parents. It's completely absurd and absolutely not meant to be taken seriously. Thankfully, Jogasaki does arrive and dropkicks Watashi to get Kaori back. He's going into all of these interactions with the expectation that he's going to find some kind of perfect storybook romance. With Hanuki, he thinks he'll save her from her neglectful boyfriend and the boss that's harassing her. His situation with Kaori shows us that he dreams about the idea of having a movie-like life, where he runs off with someone and they make their love work. While with Keiko, we see him fantasizing about the ideal version of himself that he believes would make him suitable for an idealized person, such as Keiko was written. But the reality of the situation is that Hanuki is dating Higuchi and doesn't feel that way about Watashi. Kaori is literally a fucking love doll. What are you doing, Watashi? Oh my god. While for Keiko, even Akashi says that writing as that person was difficult to do. I'm sure the reason is because Watashi has absurd expectations for an ideal woman. She exists in fiction and in fiction alone. Despite the absurdity of Watashi's expectations from these three scenarios, it does reveal a lot about himself. When it comes to all three, Hanuki, Kaori, and Keiko, Watashi could have let Johnny take full control, but he never did. He was always very conflicted about the idea of doing it for a variety of reasons. As much as he wanted to do something with Hanuki, he knows it's wrong to take advantage of someone when they're horribly drunk. With Kaori, he felt that she's too much of a perfect being and that him doing that would tarnish the purity of her. While with Keiko, he says she's ladylike, but he can't see her like that. This shows he has this pure, idealized version of what love and sex should involve. He believes that it should be between two people that genuinely care about each other, and it isn't just a summer fling. I think his apprehension to Kaori and Keiko for this topic shows that he doesn't feel he is qualified for anything like that with them, hinting that they're an unattainable ideal. Kaori being the physical idealization of beauty, with Keiko being the mental idealization. Because they are perfection, he's unable to relate to them or feel qualified to be with them. Since he's unable to genuinely be himself around someone like this, there's someone he can't truly love. Even though Watashi is a young horny bastard, he isn't actually a bastard. Like, he's not actually a horrible or bad person, he's misguided and spends his time daydreaming, but doing that doesn't mean you're evil. He's immature and he's expecting life to be this fantastical, idealized version of it. But that expectation and desire is exactly why he can't get anything close to it. By holding such a high standard for what you want life to be, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, even when you could have something similar to it right under your feet. Even the expectations he sets for himself are ridiculous. Watashi spends a lot of time in his own head. The introduction of the show begins with his internal monologue, and we continue to spend a lot of time listening to him thinking. But I want to make something very clear. Just because you're thinking a lot doesn't mean you're an introspective person. Introspection requires accountability for your own actions and to be critical of yourself. Watashi is someone that daydreams. His daydreaming reveals the kind of person he wishes he could be and the expectations he sets for himself. When he was exchanging letters with Keiko, we see the amount of small embellishing he did in his writing. Picturing himself a fancy man in a massive room, someone that has gone to Paris and New York, swirling his wine while he writes his reply. He writes about an idealized version of the clubs he's in, embellishing his influence in them. Later writing about how he knows sailing, skiing, and other various activities. When Keiko wants to meet, he questions why he even wrote these things in the first place. It shows us the kind of person Watashi wishes he was, and fantasizes to eventually become. This attitude that he has towards himself isn't only shown here to Keiko, we also see it when he's in the cycling club. There's an episode where he joins a club focused on bicycling. Akashi enlists him to become the pilot for the Birdman contest. He fantasizes about the idea of winning the contest and having Akashi coming to him overjoyed by the result, saying he'll then be able to sit behind her as they ride together up a beautiful hill lined with sakura trees. He imagines this because of an encounter they had the year before. But the important part about this is Watashi's immediate reaction to this thought. He frustrates himself by the idea of falling into this situation where Akashi is kind of the person taking the lead, saying that his dreams shouldn't be so flimsy, weak, and limp-noodled. He has this intense pride and expectation that he should aim even higher, believing he should be capable to achieve some kind of greatness, and through it, he'll have multiple women interested in him. I don't think there's anything wrong with applying yourself and trying to push yourself further to achieve something amazing. I'm incredibly critical about my scripts, recording, and editing, but I know it's something I need to work towards to take steps to improve. In Watashi's case, these expectations seem to be weighing him down and are preventing his improvement, all while stopping him from getting what he wants. I think being stuck in your own head is a problem and can cause you to get in your own way. I know it's cheesy to say, but ultimately Watashi's worst enemy isn't Ozu, it's himself. His expectations, bias, and mindset are what is holding him back. His expectations of a rose-colored campus life causes him to create an idealization of what his life should be. It doesn't mean he can't get something like this, it's just that life isn't actually rose-colored. As Higuchi says to him, nothing in life is rose-colored. Everything in life is a mix of all colors. The third tatami mat of our 4.5 is a bit of a weird one, but hear me out. The theme is, life moves around you. Let me explain. Life is going to happen whether you choose to involve yourself with it or not. But choosing to not be involved doesn't mean life will pause and wait for you. The world isn't going to stop existing or slow down. I think this is a pretty existentialist idea. The world doesn't revolve around you, and it sure as hell isn't going to wait for you. The idea that the environment acts around you and you have to interface with it via your reactions and actions. An example of someone acting within the environment would be choosing to join a club or not. When I was in university, I was invited to things like anime club or whatever, but I never bothered to go because I was so focused with work. That was my excuse, at least. I could have attended the Japanese conversation circle that would happen every week, but I chose not to. Choosing to not do something is equally as powerful of a decision as choosing to do something. You don't have to get involved in a community, whether that is a club at your school, attending a local tournament for a card game, or even posting anything online. But even when you're not attending, there are people that are engaging in these moments. In some ways, this might sound like I'm trying to instill the fear of missing out. But the problem with the idea of FOMO is that you're missing out on something constantly, because something is always happening. I didn't attend those clubs because I wanted to get home as soon as I could. Either to play video games, talk with my online friends, or just to be comfy in my own place. But making this decision means I missed out on opportunities to meet people which could lead to new friendships. Or I missed out on something that I would have considered to be a disappointment, or would have made me feel like I wasted my time. Ultimately, I think going would have given me something more interesting to say than the previous 2 lines, but I don't really know how it would have been, and I'll never know. Relating this to Tatami Galaxy, there is an overarching storyline that is playing out regardless of how Watashi is involved. The passing of the Proxy War, Jokasaki's expose, or Ozu taking over the secret society. All of these things happen whether Watashi is involved in them or not. Life is going to happen, how you interact with it is up to you. And the anime displays this throughout the 11 episodes by giving hints about other things we've seen before. Jogasaki bringing Kaori to Watashi's house is because of the expose. Hanaki saying she has to go to a mystery hot pot with you-know-who is Higuchi's club. Hell, even the castella Watashi finds eaten in his room is related to a later episode. All of these things happen during other episodes, but the way that Watashi is involved in them differs greatly. Someone that is seemingly always involved in everything is Ozu. I find Ozu amazing because of how involved he is in literally everything. I know he's working towards making his perfect date with his girlfriend a reality, but I also think he's doing a lot of these things because he's just prone to being someone that will act. He's kind of the opposite of Watashi in that way. While Watashi is regularly in his own head and frequently at home, Ozu is probably outside doing some bullshit trying to make something happen. I think in some ways this is meant to show that Ozu is actively trying to create his perfect campus life through active participation and action, while Watashi is choosing to be significantly less engaged with his environment while still bemoaning the situation he's in, but he's not really putting in the work to make his campus life rose-colored. Earlier, I talked about Keiko and how he believed that he would eventually become this amazing person he was writing himself to be, but how long was that going to take? Like, did he expect to write to this person for 4 years while not actively trying to become the person he was writing himself as? I mean, even thinking about myself for this, I had been talking and thinking about making a YouTube channel for over a couple years, but I only really started for real in the last couple of months. If you want something, you need to go and get it. This is going to be a weird pivot, but bear with me because I think it's interesting. There is a style of Japanese poetry called renga. Renga is a collaborative work. By that I mean you need to write a linked poem with at least one other person. It begins with one person writing a 5-7-5 stanza as you'd expect of haiku, but the second person writes a 7-7 stanza that is meant to move the story of the poem along. I've always felt that this style of poetry really captures the idea of life happening simultaneously throughout an area as it moves from place to place. I bring this up because that's effectively what is happening in Tatami Galaxy. We slowly learn more and more of the overarching story and through different scenarios with Watashi. In one episode, Watashi is helping Higuchi escape the library police, where in another episode, he's the person knocking on the door for the late book. The only major difference in every loop is where Watashi is located in it, but that story is going to happen even if he chooses to remove himself from it. Before I move to the next theme, let me reiterate. Life is going to happen whether you choose to participate in it or not. I think if you're hoping to achieve something or there is something you actively want, you need to genuinely work towards it, even if you think what you're doing isn't up to your expectations. Our fourth theme in our 4.5 is how inaction is the worst action. Every other timeline Watashi was in, the fortune teller always told him that opportunity was dangling in front of him, that he had to press on. In this timeline, he made a genuine mistake by isolating and removing himself from all interactions. He chose to not join a club and instead went to class, then went home. This decision was to protect himself from feeling disappointment and regret, but it was ultimately the worst decision he ever made. In this loop, the fortune teller warns him that he has gone astray and will be in danger. Watashi insists he's happy with his decisions in life, but the fortune teller doubles down, saying that he shouldn't be so stubborn. Unfortunately, this danger is exactly what Watashi needs to grow as a person. He becomes trapped in a literal but also figurative tatami labyrinth, made up of his 4.5 tatami room repeated into potentially infinity. Watashi is able to traverse into these different tatami rooms, meaning that they should be physically real. He gathers food from parallel rooms and eventually digs up cash from each one too. We even see him influence his parallel lives by eating a found castella, leaving the gathered money in another room, and eventually appearing as a ghost to another version of himself. Through things like this, I can say it's real. That ultimately the tatami maze does exist, but it only does because of his mindset. The endless rooms being a representation of him constantly being dissatisfied with all timelines, while the size of his room represents his limited perspective. Large enough that he believes is the correct amount, but not too much because who the hell do you think you are? Do you really think you should have that much space? Seems a little much, don't you think? Obviously, this is because of his outlook on things, and is him creating an excuse for staying within what is comfortable. I don't think there's anything wrong with staying within your comfort zone, but Watashi believes he has it fully figured out compared to everyone else. A combination of these two things should mean that you never view things from a different angle, along with believing that your view on something is definitely the most correct. This is how he gets his victim complex, where Ozu is always the one to blame, never himself. Back to the tatami maze though. I think another intention for making it this mixture of literal but also not literal physical labyrinth is to show how his mind, thoughts, and attitude are affecting his real physical world. His biases, expectations, and even being stuck in his own head are the things that actually have him trapped. They're affecting how he acts and reacts to people and scenarios. Even though at the start of the episode he seems content with the decision, romanticizing his room with the grandeur of a gentleman underwater. But as the story plays on, we see him suffering and feeling nothing but regret for this self-isolation. This isn't anything new for Watashi. We've seen this regret settle in at the end of every episode, but there's something different about this scenario compared to the rest. Who can he blame this situation on? Why is he here in the first place? Oh right, it's because his stupid ass put himself here. He has nobody to blame but himself. Watashi is finally forced to face himself and accept that his problems are because of his own actions, which leads Watashi to achieving self-actualization. He can finally break free from his self-imposed physical and mental constraints, meaning he can finally leave his 4.5 tatami labyrinth, both the literal physical version, but also the one in his own mind. Which spoils my final theme, the half tatami mat in the middle. Self-actualization is the conclusion that makes it all so satisfying to me. Everything I've talked about, Watashi acknowledges it himself. He finally realizes the type of person he's been and how he's been holding himself back. Instead of blaming the rest of the world, he looks inwards and finally takes hold of the opportunity that has been staring at him. With this newfound outlook and mindset, he's free from the tatami realm. Finding himself outside the back of his room, he begins seeing the world around him in a new light. Understanding that people are complex beings made up of multiple experiences and moments. Understanding that his expectations on life and running circles in his own head was preventing him from appreciating the beauty of everyone around him. seeing and appreciating how Ozu really was his friend in all of his lives. We finally see the conclusion to the overarching story, except this time with a new version of our protagonist. Like a moth to a flame, Watashi races to help Ozu on the bridge, shedding a previous version of himself like a metamorphosis, coming out as a new man with confidence and determination. Even if the last 2 years of isolation were the worst 2 years of all his parallel lives, every year from here on out will make up for the lost time. I love this anime, and I really wish I had seen it when it had first released. I think it would have helped me when I was attending university or college. The story I told in the beginning wasn't just to appeal to your emotions, to convince you to listen to me talk about this beautiful anime. It's also my own genuine experience through life. I've always struggled with loneliness and having a fear of the future, but I know I've been my own worst enemy and have gotten in my own way. When I was in university, I had chosen to isolate myself from a lot of people for about a year. It was definitely one of the worst decisions I had ever made. Seeing Watashi make that decision really hit home, especially since I was also trying to meet people during that time. I was so disappointed with the way that things had gone that I even cut contact with close friends because of my terrible attitude. Eventually, I learned to be okay with myself, and luckily for me, those close friends were still willing to be exactly that. So seeing the main character finally appreciate the people around him and appreciate the moments he gets to experience brings a tear to my eye. In Tatami Galaxy, Watashi gets to rewind time. You cannot rewind time. Watashi gets probably around 20 free years to learn the main lesson of this anime. We don't get to have that. I don't want to put some kind of fear of time running out into anyone from saying this, but we really do have a limited number of days. The only thing you're guaranteed in life is to eventually exit. That's a grim fucking sentence to say, but I think it's something most people kind of have in the back of their mind. I'm not saying I make every decision of every waking moment of my life thinking about that, or that I even consider it often. But I do think it's important to be brought up. What I took away from Tatami Galaxy is that you need to lessen your expectations. Keep your feet on the ground, appreciate and enjoy what you have around you, and try to find ways to achieve what you want. I know that's way easier than said than done, but I think even small steps can eventually clear a marathon. I mean shit, I've been working on this script for a couple weeks now. I've taken classes for years and I understand how fast a week can go by. So I understand how it feels to get caught up in a grind where months disappear. But I've always tried to be the type of person that chases what I want. Lately, that's been making YouTube videos and streaming on Twitch, and I'm having a good time doing both regardless of whatever viewership I get. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about this anime from 2010. If you've never seen the Tatami Galaxy, I can't recommend it enough. If you have seen it, I hope I was able to give some new insight to the show. Or maybe you can go read the book. Even I plan on slowly working through it now that I'm finally getting this project out the door. Here's the obligatory part where I say like, comment, subscribe, and all that. I loved reading people's comments from my first video, and it was a huge motivation like I couldn't imagine. Plus, I'm gonna be real with you, but seeing the number go up felt incredible. Now, that's the end of the video. I do, however, want to take a minute or two to talk briefly about my goals for this channel. I could make some landing page video, but I don't know, I'll just say it here. My primary goal is to talk about things that I like, why I like them, or why I think they're good. In this case, it's been me talking about anime that I love, the themes they have, what I've taken from it, or even how I relate to it. However, I also plan on talking about video games at some point. This doesn't mean I'm going to start uploading raw stream footage or something like that. If I were to do that, I'd make another channel. I want this one to be more focused and more analytical, at least right now. No idea what I'm going to be doing in a year or two from now. So if you see me upload something about video games, please don't worry. It'll definitely be about game design, themes, or why I think it's good. And I want to assure you that anime isn't going anywhere. I already know some of the things that I definitely plan on talking about. I also have to do my obligatory stream plug because, I mean, come on man, level with me. So if you're interested in what an unscripted me is usually like, yeah,
Okay,
they call me
hold
the
up.
they call me the pull-out king.
Pull-out here?
Feel free to check it out. Anyway, thanks for listening to the very end, and I'll catch you in the next one. I hope you have an amazing day.
Jesus Christ.
What? You know, Matt doesn't need to know about this. Let's just put this bitch in there.